Welcome, Community Cop. My name is Julian Harper, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I'm here today with my two co-hosts. First of all, Noel Leader.
Hotep family.
Second of all, Michael Graves, aka Big Mike.
Namaste.
And as you know, we always have our in-house historian, Michael Graves, feed us with some fantastic historical pieces. Mike, I know first we want to talk about Darren Seals, the anniversary of his killing.
Yes, this week is full of historical events, and just had to isolate it down to just three. And Darren Seals was one of the preeminent young leaders in Ferguson during the Ferguson Rebellion. He was one of the very people that Black Lives Matter circumvented and tried to take statements and positions that he took, and ultimately tried to claim him as one of them. He pointed out very clearly before he was killed that do not connect him with Black Lives Matter. He has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, and totally rejects their positions as well as the level of opportunism that they were exploiting serious situations just to make themselves known. So definitely Darren Seals is a good brother, organically linked to the Ferguson community, had that same spirit about himself, loved what he was about, and certainly mourning his death.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and I don't think this part of the story of the Ferguson situation has been covered enough. But there's been a few activists, organic activists, Ferguson, who have been murdered and died under horrific and suspicious deaths. And I think it's a large number of individuals who initiated that uprising. Michael, am I correct?
Yes.
And to date, to my knowledge, a lot of those murders are still unsolved. So I think more needs to be looked into as it relates to those individuals who met untimely deaths and had unique position in the Ferguson uprising.
And not only was he a young dynamic leader, but he was stopped shortly before his death by the police, who had a problem with the level of activism and leadership that he was demonstrating. They pulled him over to the side and said to him, "Look how easy this is." So they said, "Choose your friends wisely." Told him that. So can you imagine late at night being pulled over by a police car and they say, "Look how easy this is." They said, "You better choose your friends wisely." In other words, choose the positions you're taking wisely. And he was critical of certainly their behavior. And he was alluding to what happened to Michael Brown, strong brother. And it shows you that you don't commonly see a person in an isolated area. He got bullets in his head and the car is on fire, a burning car. So that's, some people call those crimes of passion, because it wasn't just a robbery or just a regular argument. It was something to that. But again, he was pulled over shortly before that happened and threatened to stop the level of activism that he was demonstrating.
All right. Also, Michael, the anniversary of the Attica Rebellion, 9/9/71.
Yeah, that was an accumulation of the treatment they had been receiving. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that 2 weeks before the Attica Rebellion, George Jackson was killed. Legendary Black man who found out who he was in jail, similar to what Malcolm's experience was. And certainly he became a Black Panther. Huey P. Newton said that George Jackson was the greatest writer of us all. So he was prolific in the letters that he was sending to family members and friends and comrades in the Black Panther Party. It's in a book, Soledad, brother. You can still pick that book up. It's still available. George Jackson, strong principle brother. And that's how that was that's the untold part of what provoked the Attica riots, along with mistreatment by correctional officers. Certainly the food was not what it should be. They were not making special meals for those who were Muslim in the facility. The medical treatment was bad. They didn't get the right amount of rec time, which after that rebellion started consent decrees that changed the entire prison system in New York State. And of course, Nelson Rockefeller, who wanted to be a presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate, he utilized not only the state police, but brought in more correctional officers from other facilities, combined with the state police, and they moved on Attica prison, even though they was in the negotiating process. He did not want, Governor Rockefeller didn't want to look that he was kowtowing to inmates. So even though negotiations was going on, they with Consular, Minister Louis Farrakhan, and others that came in, they just vamped on the inmates and started shooting, which caused officers to die, civilians to die, as well as inmates. Also, the brutality of the correction administration after they put down the rebellion, as you stated, Michael, officers died in that rebellion. They determined that the entourage of police officers firing bullets at unarmed prisoners, they actually killed, some of their own police. That's
officers.
Right.
And then the brutality after the rebellion was put down, many of the prisoners was strip searched and beaten on the spot. Organizers were identified and tortured. So
that's right.
This is an unfortunate history of that I'm glad you brought up for us to never forget.
Now, last but not least, Michael, 9/9/1925, the Sweet trial.
Yeah, wanted to actually save the best for last because this is a classic case of a black man who moved into a so-called affluent, exclusive community in Detroit. And this was not, it was an all-white community, basically. And the whites did not want him there. Consequently, they threatened him. They vandalized the house several times, breaking windows and doing things, throwing things on the property. He refused to move. And when his life started being threatened, that's when he had to get male family members in his family, as well as he got the brotherhood from the church. And the point I wanted to make about that there was a time where the black church was your answer to the Ku Klux Klan, White Citizens Council, white mobs and the like. You didn't have to have a street organization. The brotherhood of the church understood what their purpose was. Long before you got into the theatrics that are now in the church and just the entertainment and too much hooping and not enough doing. So the Sweet trial showed that when he fought back, and by the way, there was a police line in front of his house every night. And the police line got larger because the mobs outside the house got larger. And once the police stepped back, which they knew it would, at 1 o'clock at night, that's when the white mob shot into the house and actually started shooting at them. But thank God that the brotherhood was there. They shot back, and one white person was wounded. Another one fell. He was killed, and Dr. Ossian Sweet was actually charged with murder. Now, this was a medical doctor that had the wherewithal to live where he wanted to live, and he was actually charged with murder. He actually, in 1925, beat murder charges for shooting and killing a white person who was shooting into his house, trying to kill him on his own property. So we need to remember that. It was a long, arduous trial, but he won you know, he won, and that was a victory that we need to remember. Here, almost 100 years later, white folks are still shooting black people, even civilians. I'm not even talking about police officers. You know, look no further than George Zimmerman and others, and whether it's the Arbery case and all these other cases where white civilians are killing black people ad nauseum without a true response from the legal system with respect to justice.
All right. Well, I mean, you know, Mike, whether we talking about 1925 or we talking about 2020, it seems that things haven't changed. We're still dealing with the same issues, and we have to have a new response when it comes to dealing with the attacks that are on members of our community. But thank you, Michael, for that historical piece. The first topic that we're going to talk about, in Arizona, there was a police officer, a white police officer, who has been put on administrative duty, and there's an investigation being conducted into his stopping a black member of who worked in a hotel when the call that he received was a call for a man with a gun. And the description in that call was a male white wearing tan pants and a white t-shirt. Now, this police officer goes to the scene, stops a male black who happens to be an employee of that particular hotel, who's wearing a gray shirt and I believe black pants. Let me make sure, yes, a gray shirt and black pants. And he held him for 3 minutes at gunpoint. And he said to this employee of that hotel, listen, I'm stopping you because you fit the description of a report we have of a man with a gun.
Put your hands up.
Whoa, whoa.
One at gunpoint. Step out.
I work here.
You work here?
I was kicking the door closed, man.
Okay, turn around.
I work here.
That's fine.
Come on, man, you don't gotta
Step
put
this
no
way.
gun in me. I got
Hey,
my
listen to me. Listen, okay?
I got my hands.
I am responding to somebody with a firearm who matches your description. You understand that? Come here.
Now we know, and he knew at the time, that the report was of a male white with a totally different clothing description.
White male, black male, what do we got? Is he a white male, a black male? Come on. White male, he's going to be wearing a black shirt, tan pants.
He's going to be coming down the staircase and exit off that door right there.
Now, after video camera had been seen of his video cam that the officer was wearing, and his department became aware of it, he's been put on administrative duties, and there's an investigation. Noel.
So this particular story is only symptomatic of the psychological issues many white police officers have, their inability to decipher information relating to race. So their tunnel vision is focused on black skin, on African Americans, irregardless of the actions of the individual they're approaching, irregardless of the documented description, be it the physical description or clothing description. So many white officers who are infected, the sickness of white racism, white supremacy, just get locked on to black, and they associate in their mentality, in their sick, pathetic, white supremacist, racist, hate-filled mentality. They just locked in on blacks when they hear a call come over far too often.
I am responding to somebody with a firearm who matches your description. You understand that? Come here.
I got my hands up, man. Take the gun off. For real, I got my hands up.
Where's your ID at? No, you don't get to tell me what to do. Where's your ID at?
Take the gun off me, man.
No.
Where your supervisor at? You gonna shoot me?
No.
Another person on the news?
Get on your knees.
I didn't do nothing
Shut
to
the
you.
with that on your knees.
I didn't do nothing to you. Remember this. I need your badge number and your name.
You'll get everything you need.
Yeah,
Put everything on the
I
ground.
didn't do nothing to you. I got my hands up and I work here. Go call the manager.
41, where are my other units at?
And his explanation that this individual fit a description when clearly he didn't represents that pathology, that sickness, that mental disease that he has, because there's no association between the description that he heard and had over the radio and the individual that he pulled over. And we can never explain the trauma African Americans have, especially in these days and time, when a police officer has his weapon pointed at you you know, and you know, a tragedy can occur at any second. It's very frightful. It's very unfortunate. But this particular story, Julian, is symptomatic of what we're experiencing in law enforcement departments throughout the country. Sick, racist, mentality that far too many police officers have, and it's not being addressed as such. You know, that aspect of this problem, racism that exists in the minds of these police officers and these police agencies, these police departments and the district attorney's office and judge's office, that is not being addressed. And it is the cause of what we're seeing today in terms of this friction between members of the African-American community and law enforcement departments and officers around the country.
Now, Michael, the description was, let me make sure I have it clear. Black t-shirt, male white wearing black t-shirt and tan pants. Now, the employee who was exiting the building at the time was wearing, the male black employee was wearing a light gray shirt and black pants. How is it possible that this officer could in any way state that he had justification in stopping this male black, and how could he possibly confuse the two descriptions?
Well, I'll use a term that that Noel coined last week. He said that the officers in Kenosha, he called it tunnel vision. And I went on to say that they also had tunnel hearing.
Right.
Well, this officer has been infected with that same disease, because we know it ain't racism. We know it's not white supremacy. So this officer, if we're talking about Kenosha, and this story was in where, Arizona?
Yes.
Right. So we're going from the Midwest. Now we all the way on the West Coast. Now I know that COVID-19 is spread all over. This disease of tunnel vision and tunnel hearing is spread all over, because if you're looking for a white man, you're looking for a white man. If you're looking for a black man, then look for a black man. But don't try to use any article of clothing and mistake that for a person. So if the person had on a black t-shirt, a white man with a black t-shirt, that ain't got nothing to do with black skin. That has nothing to do with an African. He was hunting Africans. This was a classic situation of a white man, a white cop that was looking to kill a black person, irrespective of what the call was. So the call was a white man with a gun. He don't want to hear that. And we don't get it. The fact is, he's like, damn, I wish it was a black man. And in his mind, he said, it is a black man. If I see a black man, I'm going to take him out.
And then you can get
so the black man ate humble pie and begged for his life.
It's crazy.
And he still almost shot.
He steadily got his gun on me and I got my hands up.
It don't take 3 minutes
too.
to determine that this is an employee.
I know I work here, but he steadily got his gun.
It don't take more than 3 seconds.
Hey, record this, man.
But this white man had already decided he wanted to kill a black man. And that black man is fortunate that he didn't squeeze off, open up on him anyway, because this was a white man that was bent on destruction, bent on death. That was his solution to this situation, to kill that black man. And there are officers like that running around here every day that can't wait to shoot a black man.
And Julian, this is why, you know, we constantly cover these kind of issues, and this is why our community is so alarmed when we see and hear this type of incident occur, because had the police officer used deadly physical force in this instance, and when the dust settled and he discovered that he was confronting the wrong individual, he would have came up with the typical explanation that the individual failed to yield to his orders, the individual moved in a furtive manner, and the officer feared for his safety, so he used deadly physical force, and it would have been written off as just another mistake.
You don't got to hold no gun. My hands are up. I'm not a threat to you.
Are you a cop?
I'm not a threat to you.
Are you a cop?
I'm not a threat to you.
You don't tell me what a threat to me is. You don't know.
Just because you're a cop don't mean you can hold a gun at somebody whenever you get good and damn ready. I put my hands up and I'm
When I'm responding to somebody with a firearm, I can do what I need to stay safe and go home to my family. Do you understand that?
My hands are up.
And far too often these instances don't need to occur. It's unnecessary. You know, when you have a description of a male white, you just don't stop anybody. And the clothing description doesn't match and the physical description doesn't match. There's no reason for the police officer to be having this type of serious, potentially deadly confrontation with a civilian. Totally unnecessary. And this is something similar that we've seen when the police officer pulled over a vehicle that had a stolen plate from a different state, but the vehicle was also different. The stolen vehicle was a motorcycle, and these 4 African-American females were driving in a vehicle, a car. Yet white police officers forced them out of their car on the ground. The youngest was 6 years old, and we constantly and repeatedly see these unnecessary, very serious, potentially deadly interactions between white police officers and innocent members of our community when it's totally unnecessary. So, you know, what happened here, this officer clearly doesn't deserve to wear the uniform. If he can't make the distinction between the suspect, who's described as being a white male, and he stops at gunpoint for 3 minutes, a black male employee of the facility that he was at.
All right. Michael, there was a controversial statement made by a New Orleans city councilwoman.
Yes, this city councilwoman was driving along on a tour with the media. The media asked her a question as to what would be a good, now this is in New Orleans, mind you, in the 9th Ward. I need to mention that. The lower 9th Ward, which is literally majority black. She was asked what business would be considered a thriving business in this area. If someone wanted to invest, what would be considered a thriving business? And the city councilwoman, her name is Nguyen, Cyndi Nguyen. She's Asian. She said that a thriving business would be Greasy Fried Chicken. She said that's what they like, Greasy Fried Chicken. Now this is an Asian, mind you. She said, don't count on a Walmart, that's out. She said the best thing for a thriving business person to invest in would be Greasy Fried Chicken. Now, a local elected official, Representative Jason Hughes, he's a black man. He at least took offense, saying that that he was shocked, saying that he was appalled by her words. That was the level of his condemnation. But here you have in 2020 an Asian who might be first generation or second generation American, spewing out age-old concepts that go back to slavery, that black people love chicken, as if white people don't eat chicken. Now, if she's gonna point out to the media, black people love greasy fried chicken, somebody should have asked her, how many black households have you visited and sat and dined with them? If you didn't have dinner with them, what makes you think they love greasy fried chicken as opposed to baked chicken or boiled chicken or whatever, or maybe another type of meat? But she stressed greasy fried chicken. That is nothing more than the very racist tropes that you hear in Hollywood, that you see in movies, that's really taught, that was always taught, the lazy black and fried chicken and watermelon. That just shows you the beat goes on. 2020, this hasn't changed. Here she's representing a black neighborhood. She's a councilwoman and says that about black people. I hope we remember that during the next time of election for her.
But my real concern is that if this neighborhood that she represents, or this community she represents, is predominantly black, and she was voted in by members of that community, what information did she give them that made them believe that she would support and represent issues and fight for issues that are affecting their community, or that community, I should say? I mean, I can't imagine what she could have said to make them think that she would be the best person suited to represent them under that political realm.
Well, clearly, you know, she's a politician, and be it, you know, her words, or be it Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or any other politician that appeals to the African American community for support, but really internally can care less, or holds these stereotypes, as you said, Julian, or these generalizations negative about the African American community, the people that they claim they want to serve. You know, the scripture said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. She just allowed her community that she at one time at least approached, and they thought she was an ally, a political ally, but clearly she holds these stereotypes for her to be able to speak so freely, as you stated, Michael, to the press about it. It's only a reflection of what she really feels, or how she really sees the African American community. I'm sure there might be some in the community that like the kind of chicken she describes, but there are others who don't. There's people in other communities, white community, the Asian community, that clearly likes greasy white chicken. You can go to many Asian restaurants and find, you know, greasy chicken being sold or being had. But, you know, generalizations are not appropriate, especially for someone who claims they want to represent that particular community. It's only a reflection of the total disregard she really has, and the biases, the internal biases that she really has about that community. But it's only a reflection of what we've been seeing more and more of, and people feeling freely to articulate statements against and that are offenses to the African American community. I mean, Julian, last week we talked about a police chief that, you know, used language which indicated that he thought black people should be warehoused. We've heard individuals, commanding individuals, ordering their officers right here in New York to arrest all black people. We've heard police officers feeling freely to say over the internet, when is it appropriate to shoot and kill Colin Kaepernick? We've heard a police sheriff stop a white female and say, listen, we only shoot black people. You heard the President of the United States recently give a call to white suburbanites, saying that we're not going to allow the ghettos or ghetto residents to come and destroy the suburbs. So we're getting all of these repeated messages, stereotypical racist messages targeted at members of the African American community in this very volatile atmosphere that we find ourselves in 2020, coming from all over, be it police officers, be it politicians, be it head of departments, be it the President of the United States, you know, bombarding the public, these stereotypical, volatile generalizations, negative generalizations about members of the African American community, and some, as I mentioned, are even threatening messages.
When we respond to that, we have to make sure that we hold elected officials accountable. We have to vote for people who are operating and thinking for the benefit of our community. And, you know, one of the problems that I have is that we have elected officials who sit side by side, and we talk about African American elected officials who sit side by side these politicians who are disparaging us, who have a negative kind of thought of African people, and do not operate to benefit our communities. So what should our response be when we talk about either A, putting these elected officials in office, and B, holding these elected officials that are black and are supposed to have our concerns and issues in the forefront that are failing us?
Well, in 1985, that seat has always been held by a Black person, always. Even after Hurricane Katrina, it was held by Blacks. It has now changed hands. That community used to be 5,000 residents in the lower Ninth Ward. It is now just 1,600. Whites are, just moving, as they called it, Hurricane Katrina, a perfect storm, because they always wanted to move Black folks out of New Orleans and replace them with whites, similar to what you see this gentrification that's going on here in New York City, especially Manhattan. So this was ideal, and she was with white media people, and she expressed herself, but this is reminiscent of age-old tropes that have been associated with Black people.
And I might just finally say, Julian, real quickly, that clearly in 2020, it's almost as it's become acceptable norm to disparage members of the African community. And I don't care if you're talking about from the lowest element of the person on the street, homeless, to a Black elected official. It has become part of the culture, acceptable behavior. And that's why she felt so comfortable in making these disparaging comments. And, there's a good possibility that she was so ignorant to her own racism, her own generalization, that somebody had to point it out to her that this is inappropriate to make such a statement. I'm not sure if she came back, Mike, and apologized, but clearly there was a level of comfortableness that really shouldn't exist for her to make such disparaging comments, as all of these comments that I spoke about, all of them were made in the public, and there's a level of comfortability in making these horrific, racist, stereotypical, defaming, threatening comments against members of the African American community. And that should be very, very troubling, man. Very troubling.
Noel.
Yes, sir.
In Rochester, New York, the mayor, and I believe her name is Love, stated the entire upper echelons of her police department has resigned over the Daniel Prude killing or murder.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that horrific, unfortunate murder of Daniel Prude, who was an emotionally disturbed individual, or individuals who were experiencing a mental crisis when police officers were called, when Rochester police officers were called to give him assistance, as opposed to giving this individual who was experiencing a mental crisis assistance. They wind up killing him in a sadistic, uncompassionate,
just straight water. You see all that water came out of his mouth?
No, I didn't see it, but I see it now.
This is all water. My man, you puking? Oh, look at this.
I saw the ambulance coming, so I moved it.
The community in Rochester have been calling for the police chief, that officer, to be arrested, the police chief and administration to be terminated, because although this incident occurred in March, and the family and the community have been calling, and his attorneys have been calling for the Rochester officials to reveal the videotape that they had sequestered, there's been a resistance by the authorities to reveal this particular video, which is now going viral. And because they knew, as in all these instances, that the officers acted inappropriately, that the officers' actions contributed to the unnecessary death of another individual who needed assistance, as opposed to be treated brutally. The officials attempted to hide this. The police officers were not suspended, were not arrested, under the guise that the agency since March, and now we are in September, the police officials, including the police commissioner, who had access to this video, didn't take any punitive actions against the officers until the administration was forced, due to community pressure, to release the film. And when the film was released, we see now how callous police officers acted, and we see that this particular death, another one, was totally unnecessary. So now the agency, as Michael, you talk about what happened in Chicago all the time, when Chicago Mayor Emanuel did similarly, holding a video of a black man that was shot, and the police officer all lied. So the community being outraged demanded the resignation of these officials, and this police commissioner is doing the right thing. He's stepping down because he's not qualified to be a commissioner that represents the entire Rochester community. He didn't act proactively prior to the public, becoming aware, and his family attorneys become aware in the videos. And it should not, Julian, as an executive in the police department, former executive, that it should not take the public pressure. It should not take video revelations for police officers act, aggressively against officers who acted inappropriately and ultimately caused the death of a civilian. That should be done irrespective of the information the community having this information. He didn't do so. So due to pressure, he decided to step down. It was the right call. Everyone who knew of this incident and the specifics of this incident and didn't act appropriate should be removed from the job, because the public who pays their salary has a right for them to act appropriately.
Now, Mike, let me ask you a question. The police department talks about being blue, and I know we have conversations and we talk about a multitude of different, whether we talk about religion, whether we're talking about law enforcement. Most folks are white before they are anything. They're going to put their whiteness before the police department. They're going to put it before their religion. Now, this chief of this police department is a male black, and he retired, put his papers in, he resigned from the position of chief, when I think that some would hope that him, as being a black man first, because we all are black before we decide to become police officers, attorneys, doctors, we're black men and women, we would think that he would look for some justice and some fairness and equity in this investigation. And I'm somewhat baffled by him thinking that the best thing for him to do is resign, unless there was some either A, negligence, culpability, or something relative to this particular case, or his failure to take part in ensuring that there's some equity and fairness in the investigation in this case.
Well, look, let me get right to the point. Let's be clear. He is doing that in sympathy with the other white managers. Now, if these were black police officers involved in a homicide, you would not get white managers, bosses, resigning to protect them. They would not have jeopardized their careers in the handling of evidence to help black police officers. So he should show some racial integrity. He should show that he has a damn moral compass by not allowing them to resign, by first of all firing them in shame, not allow them to resign in dignity, fire them in shame, and then in turn recommend charges for all those that have been found to participate in the air cover, the cover-up of this homicide. The fundamental question is the same fundamental question that they asked President Nixon. What did you know and when did you know it? So that applies to all of them. And if you find out they knew, and when did they know it? When did the cover-up occur? What role did they play in cover-up? Fire them, and since they participated or covered up a homicide, they should be charged appropriate to the very same people who pulled the trigger. Everybody should either be fired or they should be receiving charges from the district attorney's office for whatever level of participation they played in the death of a black man.
Well, Noel, very quickly. It was determined that he died from asphyxiation, and they said that he had PCP in his system. Now, having PCP in your system is going to cause asphyxiation, but putting a bag over someone's head, which we've seen in the video, may contribute to that. Now, when we talk about these chiefs resigning, and I'm sure they're resigning with a very hefty pension. That does not take away from any culpability that may exist in them either A, covering up the death or whatever role they may have played in this young man's untimely demise. Your thoughts on that, Noel?
First of all, Michael is correct, and we talk about that many times over the program. You know, the difference between being fired and being terminated, being terminated and resigning, is when you resign, you maintain all your benefits that the agency affords. When you're fired, many times you lose those benefits. So if these officers, as Michael and you stated, Julian, have violated their oath, have neglected to do their jobs, they should have been terminated, as most civil employees are when they're acting appropriately when doing their job. So that's why we frequently admonish, and we sometimes we're critical of administrations who allow these police officers to resign as opposed to being terminated. You know, I also wanted to give big kudos to the community of Rochester, who has continued to put pressure on the mayor and the administration to come forth with the truth of what happened and to prosecute the police officers involved. Because as you stated, Julian, you know, not only did they put a hood, which they claimed to stop him from spitting, but they also piled on his body. They also pushed his head into the ground. So clearly there was some pressure. Michael, many times, some of you never even heard of positional asphyxiation. Some of you thought Michael made it up, you know, before he consistently and persistently talks about it, that we have similar instances like that. So it was not only the placing an object over his head, but it was also the positional asphyxiation, the pressure they applied to his body was obstructed his ability to breathe. And someplace, somewhere along the line, one of the officers should acknowledge the stress that they were putting him under and the critical position that he was in that ultimately resulted in another unnecessary death. You know, so big kudos for the Rochester community, and we commend them for keeping the pressure on this particular incident.
Right. Michael, there was an 11-year-old that was beaten in Kansas City. Tell us a little more about that story.
Yeah, this 11-year-old girl was playing with her friends in Kansas City, actually at her housing complex, and a white child, 12-year-old boy, came up to them and started uttering racial slurs, you know, the N-word and all these other things at them. Her response, and I'm sure she has excellent parents and family members and good friends around her. Her response was, "My black is beautiful." Consequently, after saying that enraged the white 12-year-old so much that he took a pipe, a metal pipe, and beat her almost to death. She was concussed, several injuries all over her head, serious headshots. Her cheek is wide open. The inside of her cheek had to be sewed as well as the outside, and she lost the tooth. He beat her almost to death. There's no excuse for that. How much hate has he learned in a short 12 years that he can go to a housing complex? I mean, he's a coward now, don't get me wrong, but he went to a black housing complex and beat a girl with a pipe. It does not mention that he went to a grown man or anybody that could defend themselves. He went to a little girl. He's a devil, a young devil, and a young coward to do what he did.
I mean, what else needs to be said? You know, it's symptomatic of the atmosphere of the country, and you know, things that are going on in America is an embarrassment about the whole globe. I mean, everybody's looking, and you know, I'll be interested to see how this individual is charged, prosecuted, and ultimately how he's sentenced.
He was only charged with aggravated battery. They did not include any racial charges.
And then not only that, but I mean, when you describe the injuries, it seems like an attempted murder charge, should be appropriate as well.
Right, absolutely.
It's unfortunate when we can talk about, and the next story I think is going to put all of this stuff together. But it's unfortunate. There are multiple cases, and I have had to fight in my time in the police department to try to prevent officers from downcharging white folks when they are being charged with committing crimes against black folks. Now, I've seen cases where, and had to fight for cases where a white person may have been charged with a felony, but the detective would try to downgrade the case and make it a misdemeanor. And the only reason why they were doing it because it was a white youth, and we're talking about black youths who were the victims of those particular crimes. So this isn't anything new if the charge and when the charge was downgraded, but we need people in position to fight for the rights of our people, ensure that these people are held to the letter of the law when it comes to the crimes that they're committing against our community. But we have another story that I think is going to put all of this together. There were 3 drafts reports made by the Department of Homeland Security that has predicted that white supremacy will be the most persistent and lethal terrorist threat in the United States next year. So the Department of Homeland Security expressed great worries about the ideology of white supremacy, more than foreign terrorist groups and disinformation efforts from Russia concerning being involved with our electoral politics in our presidential race. Mike, you and I had talked about this briefly earlier. My position is that I don't think they have to wait until next year. I think that it is now. But your thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, I would just say that whoever came up with the idea that next year white supremacy will be a problem is a genius. However, their genius should not be recognized because they're about at least 150, 160 years late. So this person who came up with that idea obviously has the Rip Van Winkle disease where they've been sleeping all this time. Now, white supremacy built this country. It was built on the backs of black people who were brought from Africa, as well as Native Americans who were the caretakers of this land. So you got 2 premier sins of white supremacy: the capturing and enslavement of African people, and then the Aborigines, the native people to this land. Their land was taken and they were victims of genocide. So this person is kind of late to the party. I'm glad they're there, but they're kind of late. If they look at white supremacy years ago, going back to at least 2008, the FBI has followed this because of the Southern Poverty Law firm and company and others that have been pointing out all the various white supremacist groups that are infiltrating law enforcement all over the country. So in any event, for them to say 2021, it was the foundation of this country. And certainly after 1865, within a year, the Ku Klux Klan, Pulaski, Tennessee was in operation, White Citizens Council. So white supremacy has been on the forefront, but I'm glad whoever came up with this idea is finally facing reality.
And Julian, when you read Homeland Security coming out with these declarations, all you have to do is look at the public media, the public airways, and you see that these white extremist organizations, what they want is a race war. They say it kind of matter of factly. They want a race war to occur in the United States of America. That is why you see many members of these organizations even join in such marches as Black Lives Matter protests and committing acts of violence under the guise that they want to promote Black Lives Matter. What they really are attempting to promote is antagonism against the Black Lives Matter protests. You see individual white people joining these protests. Some have even been arrested, and they were found to be under blackface, with hoods on. They wanted to appear to be African Americans and engage in criminal acts because what they want to do is create an atmosphere against Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen incidents of African Americans, allegedly committing suicide, being lynched by lynching, which is problematic. I wouldn't put it past some of these shootings that are occurring, unsolved shootings around the nation. These groups are trying to conjure up racial animosity to the umpteenth level. I mean, racial animosity is as American as apple pie, but they're trying to ratchet it up. They're trying to increase the volume because out of their own mouths, they want a race war in the United States of America. So Homeland Security is correct, I believe, when they make this announcement that they really should be categorized as terrorist organizations. But Julian, the surprising and the unfortunate thing about this atmosphere is that the President of the United States has even contributed to the message, to the atmosphere, and he has even articulated directly in some instances and indirectly in others his support for some of these organizations, some of these groups. So we have a president with a similar mindset that he wants the racial animosity that exists in America to be increased. And in his case, it's only because he wants to be elected elected president again. But it's very troubling, very problematic. And for his own Homeland Security to make this pronouncement, and with him being silent as it relates to it, it's problematic.
Well, just want to point out one quick note. The Ku Klux Klan is the oldest terrorist organization in America. Again, the Ku Klux Klan is the oldest
on the planet, Michael. On the planet
in America.
They're the oldest terrorist organization on the planet.
Okay.
They exist before ISIS. They existed before a lot of these other organizations were even in existence.
Well, one of the things that you talked about, Noel, and I agree with you, the president has his own agenda when it comes to adding fuel to this racial tensions. But one of the things that we have to remember, there were three police officers that were caught having the same discussion on their mics and then on their car recording devices, saying that they wanted there to be a race riot and that they were going to go out and get their long guns and they wanted to kill African Americans.
Right.
So, this thing is so deeply embedded in the fabric of this nation. And we as a people have to really open our eyes and believe what we see. But we have to have a response. We cannot sit here idle and allow this to permeate. And we cannot expect, and this is just me speaking, we cannot expect a nation who is taking part with a president who is taking part of this insanity to resolve the problem. That's not going to happen. They are not going to come in and be the saviors of Black people when it comes to racism, white supremacy. We have to develop a plan and a strategy to combat this insanity. And as Noel always talks about, this mental sickness that exists in the minds and the fabric of this nation.
And the plan and strategy has to include organize. The attack against us as a people, it's an organized attack. It's not fragmented. We're talking about organizations. We're talking about organizations. So our response, has to be an organized response. As we say always on this program, the solution to all what's going on is everybody under the sound of my voice, everybody viewing this program should belong to one organization, at least one organization specifically designed to uplift and protect and benefit our people, our community. I don't care if it's a political organization, a religious, a social, economic, educational, any way, shape, or form. Everybody under the sound of my voice should belong to some organization that's specifically designed to address the issues that affect our community. That's the solution.
Right. And you know, they always talk about striking when the iron is hot. Right now, the iron is very hot.
Oh.
You know, we have a lot of groups, a lot of people are having the discussions. We have social media. We see the effects of white supremacy and how it is destroying the very fabric of anything that we do as African Americans to collectively deal with some of the issues that are malaffecting our community. So we have to work together collectively. I mean, I've been watching sports, and you have all of these multimillionaires who are in sports, who are taking part in showing that they have true concern and that they recognize the attack on our community. I don't know if any of you guys watch tennis, but there's this young sister, and her name is Osaka, and she has been wearing masks every day or every time she played with the name of a victim of police brutality. And what was really strange that a female white reporter questioned her about her mask. And even written by other reporters, they said that her questioning was inappropriate because she said, well, who are you gonna wear next? As if this was something that was just light. And you know, this young woman, and she's half black and half Japanese, she's playing for Japan, but she understands the African in her, and she is very touched and troubled by what's going on. And a multitude of athletes feel the same way. So when I talk about the iron being hot and it's time to strike, when we have this multitude of people who are truly concerned and recognize the attack on our community, I believe now is time for us to strike. And when I always talk about, and Noel knows that I always say this, it's time for a revolution. We need a political, an economic, a structural revolution to how we deal with this nation.
Julian, quick question. Where's the Williams sisters at? Where's Sabrina?
Yeah, let me respond to that.
Oh,
well, let me just say this. You know, they are playing tennis. I have not heard any comments from Serena, who is still, she just won her quarterfinal match. I heard no responses from her. Her sister had lost, I believe, in the first match, the first round, Venus, and I didn't hear any comments from her either.
Michael said he has. Let's go, Mike.
Okay. Naomi Osaka said that she's a black woman. Now, she didn't acknowledge anything about being Japanese. So I'm going to go with what she said. When she was asked to describe herself, why is she wearing certain articles? She said, I'm a black woman. That's what she said. That's not me talking. That's her talking. So here, she's won a certain amount of tournaments. She's considered #1 in the world right now. And she said she's the black woman. And she said she supports the black movement. She said, I'm not a leader. I'm a follower, but I'm a black woman. She made that clear. Now, they asked Serena Williams they played her comments to Serena Williams and asked Serena what she thought of that. And Serena said, her exact words were, that's how Naomi feels, and she's allowed to feel whatever she feels. I have my own personal religious beliefs. Now, what the hell did that got to do with justice? See what happens when you sleep white, and you sleep white long enough, like Serena has, you start thinking white, and you can't even think, you can't even conceptualize black terms, a black movement, and being in spirit with a black movement. That's what's wrong with Serena and her white husband. Here you got a young girl, 18, 19 years old, saying I'm a proud black woman, irrespective of others that's trying to claim her in other communities. And yet Serena says, well, I have my own personal beliefs. Well, their personal beliefs will be ill-affected if it happened to someone you know or someone you care about. Now it ain't about beliefs, it's about, come on, we got to get justice. But that's indicative of Serena, because Serena sleeps white. Serena was dating white guys for years and told black guys, you need not apply. And she tried to deny all of that, but she went through a whole bunch of white guys before she settled on this white guy right now, and that's the facts. And I look more to seeing Sister Naomi, and I did say Sister Sister Naomi Osaka seeing her win as opposed to Serena. That's me.
And what's unfortunate about it is that if you remember when Vanessa and Sabrina, right? When they were coming up during the ranks, they were discriminated against.
Venus and Serena.
Excuse me, Venus and Serena. Yeah, they both, tell about how poorly they were treated because they were black, by white tennis players. And I guess success and a lot of money, to some people brings on amnesia. But I'll stop it there. So it's very unfortunate because we supported the Sabrina sisters, the Williams sisters, for years. So it's unfortunate that they have taken this position.
Right. Well, Mike, and we have to wrap it up. But Mike, the only reason why I brought up her being Japanese is because she plays for Japan. So that's why I mentioned that aspect of who she was. But anyway.
She probably acknowledged both parts.
Yeah, but anyway, we're running out of time, so we got to wrap it up. Michael Graves, your final comments?
Look, talk to the attorney at war, the real attorney at war, Alton Maddox, several times over last week and over the weekend. He sounds good. He sounds great. Good to see him. People trying to be the attorney at war out of history. But Alton H. Maddox is here. He's good, and he'll be back. Black man, black woman, protect the black child, accept your own, and be yourself.
Noel.
There's no book. Yeah, hello? Okay, there's no book I would want to read at this particular time of my life than the autobiography of Alton Maddox. This is a great man who's done great things, and his story is probably one of the least known stories that should be known at anybody I can think of now in 2020. We love you, brother Alton Maddox. A little more, I love you, Lenny Lou, Kitty Cat. I love you. See you next week, family.
And just very quickly, speaking of Alton Maddox, we've been fortunate enough to have him on our show many times. He's a member of this community cop family like the rest of us, and we appreciated him. We miss him. We love to see him and have him again. And you guys can view some of the old shows that he was on. Harper family, I appreciate you. Sharon, Darlene, thanks for watching and your support. Leader family, Grace family, community cop family, Veronica Kit, Nat Woods, Sheila Berry, Big D, and everyone else that gives us an opportunity to air this show. We appreciate you. Thank you. And community cop family, keep watching. We love you. What time? Would you say, Noel?
Before I say peace, I just want to also say, Alton Maddox, you still have an open door community cop. All you got to do is call. You can join us here virtually. But family, hey!